All right. Hey everybody, how you doing today? This afternoon, not tonight. Let me get a couple things in order here with my Stream Deck thing. I guess I don't have a Stream Deck. It's just a OBS. It's been a stretch since I have last. Why don't you move? Oh yeah, you're locked. That's why. There we go. Get me nice and centered. And then I messed up. That's not what I want for the background. So let's change to something a little better. Mobile files, resource, backgrounds. Go with the standard. Yeah, that's good. Good enough. All right, this afternoon, everybody. How are you doing today? Today we're going to be doing a little live stream on your quad sucks, your build sucks, your electrical sucks. Prove me wrong. That's how I look at my builds every time I put something together. And it's not so much my build skills, uh, although I'm not saying I'm some excellent builder, but you could just get bad equipment. So today we're going to talk about how you can kind of analyze that. It kind of surprises me that more people don't do it. I would, of course, recommend it that you take a look at your build to make sure your equipment's good or your build's good or your frame's okay or anything of that nature, just from diagnostic standpoint to make sure everything is in order. I'm assuming I am coming through for you guys in good order here. Let me change some things here. It's like I have dual audio for some reason. Yeah. Oh, that one's delayed and this is not delayed. Okay, let's do that. So there, it should be better. Let me know if the audio sounds like you have two mics on. Yeah. So let me know if that's better. Looks like I had the non-delayed and the delayed on, and hopefully it will line up a little bit better now. And also, let me try to get some of these other things squared away here. So that one should be good there now. Sorry, I'll deal with that later. And then let me see if I have that. That is the wrong desktop. So desktop monitor, go to here. There we go. I can switch back. There we go. And I do want to have webcam. No, I really want to have this Sony. Sorry, folks. Just got to get this OBS thing squared away. Here, I should be able to copy this. Go to here. Paste reference, paste duplicate, paste duplicate, paste reference. I don't know the difference between paste duplicate and paste reference. So there you go. That's that. So that should be all right. So let's go back to here. All right. So, yep, that fixed it for sound. Thank you very much for the feedback. And we'll be doing some question and answer, and you'll have to apologize for the look down because I have everybody down here below me. Sounds like it's to the audience. RC, yeah. Thanks for mailing off those flight controllers with the new gyros, the 42 something odd. I'll take a look at those and see if there's something I can glean from that or whatnot. I have been hearing, it's hard to always say, right? This new gyro, it's it's ICM 42 something 88 something. I've been hearing a bunch of people complain about those, but it's hard to know because it's like less than 10 complaints, which seems to be a lot, but how many boards have been sold with them? Is it a specific board or whatnot? So we'll take a look at those. It's most likely the board design is usually the problem, if anything. It seems nowadays that, it's complicated and it's not always the first version that they get it right, but it could be something else. Yeah, so Bannister Post talks about thinking about sticking a small cap on the FCs now. What size and where would you suggest? So on the flight controller, if you do decide to put a capacitor on there, what I would recommend is to put it on VBAT. So many of the flight controllers, like this one, you'll have a VBAT pad, of course, And the electrolytic capacitors that you might have, they have, although it's not listed very often, they have a lower voltage threshold. So you can kind of do two things. If it's your run-of-the-mill capacitors you have for higher voltage, like a 25 or 35 volt capacitor or 50 volt capacitor, those would do no good on the 5V or 3.3V rail. If you For those, you wouldn't need to necessarily have 1,000 microfarad capacitor on your flight controller itself. Maybe a 330 microfarad or 480 or something of that nature. Obviously, if you have 1,000, you can fit it. It's not going to hurt anything, but I don't know if you need to go that direction right off the bat. Uh, One of the things that I show in my one video to kind of really nip it in the butt to know if you're having a electrical noise issue on your flight controller is I have a little dongle. I don't know if I have it here. I don't know where it's at exactly in my desk of stuff, but it's basically just taking a well, it's, yeah, here it is. It's basically just taking a simple XT60 connector and putting on some smaller wires. They don't need to be huge. And if you desolder the pin coming from your ESC, so most people have 4-in-1 ESC, and if you desolder the VBAT pad, which is what powers the flight controller, and then you just power this up and hook this up to the flight controller. So red goes to VBAT on the flight controller, and then black goes to ground, of course. Then your flight controller is now powered by a separate battery. So it just kind of be like a test flight. So it's not that hard to depin the one pin, solder this up. If you have like a little 2S or 3S pack, you could throw it on there. If you have a XT30, it doesn't need to be a big battery. And obviously you'd power your quad up yet with the whatever 6S, 4S, and then you'd power your flight controller up with this little plug. Now, when you have between the ESC and the flight controller, you don't want to take away the ground wire, just the VBAT wire on the connector, which is critical, or obviously you'll have issues. You'll burn something up. But that will then feed your flight controller with a separate battery. Now, a lot of cine lifters do that right off the bat. They power their camera. They power all their sensitive electronics, cameras, everything with separate power. Now, those are huge, 2 kilogram plus rigs. It makes a lot more sense, especially when you have expensive cameras on board. It's not for racing quads and things like that. It's more just a test. And then if you see a noticeable difference by doing that, then you know for sure it's an electrical issue. So you're not guessing, is it the gyro, is it electrical? I don't know. So that's one thing you can do. For capacitors, again, the VBAT put a 330 microfarad on there. If you have a 1000, put that on there to start. It doesn't hurt, and you can try the 330 later and kind of downsize it, and see if that improves it. There's no guarantee that is going to make a big difference. The other option I haven't played with just yet is, your gyro is being powered on the 3.3 volt rail. So their VBAT comes in, and the regulators take it down to 5 volts and 3.3 volts. The processor and the gyro are powered on the 3.3. So obviously putting a capacitor directly on that, but you have to have a low voltage capacitor, 3 or 5 or 6 volt. It could be electrolytic, tantalum capacitors as well, or ceramic. The tantalum or the electrolytic have a lot of microfarad rating, whereas the ceramic and the tantalum don't have as high microfarad ratings typically. And I believe, I'm not an electrical engineer. So yeah, check it out. I'm going to get some electrolytic, lower voltage capacitors and try that on a couple like this. It's good because this SpeedyB V2 was a really good test, because I have this quad that I built to have SpeedyB on it. So this has a SpeedyB V2 flight controller, or ESC, and then I had the SpeedyB V2 on there as well. Now, I had this one on here. I don't know where it is. I might have. It's here somewhere. Yeah, I had this one on it. it had the issue with the pitch access, and I wired it up with a separate voltage source to power a separate battery source to power the flight controller like I just talked about, and it went away. So that's not a gyro issue. That's an electrical isolation issue. Then I actually broke this this connector here. I don't know if you saw anybody saw that video. But then I asked SpeedyBee for another V2, and it's the exact same problem, a pitch access issue. So did some number of tests on that. We're going to go through what this stuff looks like and what you can look for. So that's my recommendations for capacitors and whatnot to try to help out. See out here. Yeah. So Zipper Lips FPV talks about, he's not moving away from the MPU 6000. MPU 6000 is a try and true board. I wouldn't say that it is. I think the BMI 270 is. I've not seen data where, with a good board design, that the MPU 6000 was better than the BMI 270. The BMI 270 was performing really well. Now, is the MPU 6000, this SpeedyBee V2, for example, this doesn't have a BMI 270 with all the issues on the SpeedyBee V2 board. This is an MPU 6000 on here. So it doesn't mean like, oh, well, if it's MPU 6000, you're good to go. It's like, no, you just got to still have a good capacitance and a good board design. But on the ones where you do have a good board design and they've had the BMI 270, they performed really well. So yeah, hopefully with some decent board design, it will be okay. Can't be much worse than the Maytech Pixash issue, as Zipper Lips talked about. Yeah, Maytech sounds like they've been having some issues. And AM32 firmware, any good? But yeah, Ben Props FPV asks about, is the AM32 firmware good? As far as I've seen, I have not run it yet. I need to check that out. I just haven't dove into doing that. But Chris Rosser just did some tests on that. If you haven't checked that video out, it looks like the AM32 has a smoother like ramp or a smoother torque roll up, I guess I would say, on that it provides to the motors, where the BL Heli 32 is a little bit more jagged and jerky. So you should get, I don't know if you can really see it in real life flight performance differences, but you should get theoretically a little bit more torque out of a motor with AM32 when you're throttling up. Again, is it noticeable? In flight, he didn't do those tests. He can see it on the thrust stand and with data. So it's definitely one of those things. If you see that kind of stuff, you want to get it fixed. So hopefully BL Heli 32 will fix that up, but the AM32 did perform a little bit better on that. I haven't heard of any issues with AM32, so yeah, if people had them, I'm sure they would be talking about it. So yeah, maybe check it out. All right, smooth torque delivery. I saw that one too. Yeah, Zipper Lips talk about that. Okay, so let's pull something up here. If you guys have questions, go ahead and rattle those in. And don't hesitate. If you guys ask a question and I don't see it, don't hesitate to type at UAV Tech on there, so it puts it up in blue and then I can see it a little bit easier if I don't get to a question. Yeah, Zipper Lips FPV, another example of open source for the win. I agree. I don't know what else to say. There's a reason. There's a reason I gravitate towards open source. Not saying closed source is. Open source just rocks. The guys that work on this stuff it's just better. It's just better. So I don't know. My bias is through experience. So, anyways, let's go to my archives here, and what I want to pull up is just what to listen for and kind of look for to know if you have gyro issues. Basically, how do you know, how do you have an indicator if your build is no good? And this is a thing that I go the other direction. Sometimes, you know, I'll have like close-ups of my beater quad, Jesus, it's the Martian 2 frame from Banggood from like 5, 6 years ago, which is a great frame. And some people will be like, oh, you know, look at those solder joints. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, guys, look at the logs. It performs well. So whether you can say, well, you're a good builder or a bad builder, it all comes through like, is the vibration characteristics and the electrical characteristics of the quad good? Then I don't care what the joints look like as long as everything's performing well. And I think sometimes it's people are just trying to get at me for what little things here and there. But anyways, yeah, so this is a good way to kind of separate the wheat from the thatch there. Let me pull this up. So let me get this video here and pull that sucker up onto this screen if I can. Why aren't you allowing me to? There we go. And if I change to here, yay, look at those, it worked. So in this quad, you should hear, hopefully, now I got to turn on desktop audio. You will hear kind of the indications of where do you know if there's bad flight controller or gyro electrical noise issues. You know, how do you, what's your first sign of that? So let's just play through that. You got to let this catch up here a little bit. Hopefully I don't need to. Yeah. See how it overshoots? See how in that first couple pitch moves, I was overshooting my rates? Let me turn this down, the scotch. Let's just play back through that. See how I was like almost upside down again? So, you know, you have your rates memorized, right, for forward flips. And if you start to get that, obviously that's an easy telltale giveaway. And you can hear it. So in this next one, you can see those are the pitch moves. So in this next move, why am I like double up there? So there's me. And then there's another me. What's that? What's that? What are you doing, OBS? Huh. That's interesting. Yeah, look, that's kind of funky. Yeah, cool. Green room, turn that off. That's there. Water. Oh, that's that one. Oh, there's the Sony. Okay. Yeah, that was me. That's my bad. All right. So in this next one, you will see the difference between the pitch and the roll axis. So you'll it's all about hearing, right? You listen to how you'll hear it like stutter on the pitch moves, but on the roll axis, they're nice and real clean. So check this out. The stuttery. Now listen. Clean. And can you see how the pitch is like, and the roll is poop, poop, you know, just a start and a stop. Whereas the pitch throughout the pitch move, throughout that pitch move there, you're hearing it kind of stutter as it goes around. So that is kind of your big signs for, you know, that's your first indication there's something wrong. You can honestly just kind of go by that alone. You know there's an issue. So you don't need to, you know, start busting out the logging, but you know me, we're going to take a look at that. And you can see what the issue is. And typically, you know, I would always take my first build and log it to hear, you know, this is the first thing I do. You know, I do tuning, professional tuning for people. And the first thing I do is I log their quad, of course. Now, even when I get KISS quads to tune, I usually just get KISS quads. I have not got like Falco X or anything because that's kind of gone. So yeah, it's just been KISS. Oh, and RG Pilot. So I'll get RG Pilot, KISS, and Betaflight is typically the ones that people will send in. Obviously for KISS, I just listen to it. Now, if I have an issue, I will hook up an open lagger to KISS. You know, I have this open lagger here. I can get hooked up to it, and when it has just KISS firmware on it, yeah, KISS, like original KISS, um, and KISS Ultra, if none of them came with KISS Ultra yet, but the yeah, I can log it to see specifically. But obviously, you can just hear the stuff, so you don't need to log it. So what we're looking at here is I pulled up the log from that flight, that exact flight that we're looking at, and here's the beginning part of it. And then this was this first maneuver. Now I'm going to go to UAV Tech Trace Template 4, which shows the stick moves, and you can see what we're actually getting. So if you just look here on the sticks of this, you can see as I throttle down, I'm going here, do a little punch as you typically do before a pitch move, throttle down, pitch forward, and you can see how this is just all over the place. All these squiggly lines, they should not look like that. So this is just a little recap. This is the roll, pitch, yaw axis in Black Box Explorer. And this is my motor output. So this is, 0% motor command to BL heli, all the way up to 100% motor command to BL heli if I land on the right spot. I'm almost up to 100% in here. Then, oh, and I had throttle. I had 6S on this. You can see it's not 100%. It's because I have 6S on it, but the motors are like 24 something kV. 24, the WASP 2420 kV motor, so I have the output cap thing on it. That's why they're not up at the 100%. But when you see something like this, if you just log it at any time and you see anything like this ever, that you have an electrical noise issue. And how we solve that electrical noise issue on this flight controller, we didn't absolutely solve it, but how we made it better is to add more capacitance to it. So again, back to what I initially started off, where you can put a capacitor directly on the flight controller. You can, on the VBAT of the flight controller itself. And then you can start, if you get some lower voltage capacitors, again, I'm going to do some future videos on that and see if that works out. But I know putting a VBAT on the, or put a capacitor on the VBAT of the flight controller directly does definitely help. So that's what pitch looks like. This is, again, another pitch because I did a couple pitches, third pitch, and then here's what roll looked like. So you can see how roll is just super clean. And then again, this is roll. So you can see the big difference between what this should look like when you do a flip or a roll versus what it looks like when you have bad electrical noise. And then you can hear what it sounded like, what it sounds like when it's better. So jumping back into the questions right here. Rowdy FPVS. How is it that some FCs have an electrical issue and some are not, but they are the same brand, model, and generation? That's a good question. I usually see that one thing you got to pay attention to is the version. So for a while, like when the SpeedyBee V2 came out, and this has been out for a while, I made a recent video about the SpeedyBee V3 and how it's my favorite flight controller, and it is. I really mean that. Like, I only buy SpeedyBee V3s for a 3530 anymore. I wanted that to be the V2 like a year ago or 6 months. It was a while ago when the V2 came out. But it had this issue. It had those electrical issues. So yeah, it sucked. And they changed the design on it and fixed it. In the V3, they had a TVS diode on there. That helps with motor spikes or electrical spikes. And they don't have that on the V2 version. So gotta pay attention between like the V. So I just tuned a 3-inch quad from somebody, And he had an HGL RC. So let's just go to here. He had this one. HGLRC Zeus 25. So he had a 25. And let's find this specifically. So this is the V2 version. This is, let me go to the V. So I got to go to here. So in the HDL-RC, this all-in-one, which are really tricky, I would love to receive feedback from you guys on if you know of an all-in-one flight controller, 20 by 20, I think this is, that is, I don't know if it's 20 by 20, I don't think so. Installation hole 25 by 25, okay. So it's a little bigger than that. But all-in-one flight controllers that you guys have been using that you know are good, because they're really tricky for all-in-ones. And the whole concept of like, well, put you know, at least with a normal flight controller setup, right? And I gotta switch screens here. I forgot to do that. But at least with a normal flight controller here, you have an opportunity to separate your ESC from your flight controller, right? You can put a VBAT, you can put a cap on here. You can actually, like I talked about earlier, disconnect the voltage wire, the power wire from the ESC up, powered it with a separate battery if you really wanted to. With an all-in-one, you don't have that option. Of course, they're putting capacitors on the VBAT where the battery, you know, connects in like right here. So everybody's doing that. And if they're in bad shape. So for example, he had a Zeus 25. He did not have the V2 version. So if I go to here, I guess I can go duplicate. If I look, ZUS 25. So let me see if I can find it. He had this one. Yeah. And I think that was the difference. This one. Yes. So this is the V2. He had the Zeus 25 AIO. Again, electrical issues. So he had one 3-inch with this Zeus 25 AIO, and then another one with a KISS all-in-one, you know, all-in-one flight controller. The KISS one did not have issues with electrical noise problems. So I tuned that one up. He wanted them both tuned. And then I tuned up the Betaflight one had issues as well. I ended up changing. He had the one thing we changed on this, or one thing I changed on it, is that initially when I received this quad, he had the ESC PWM frequency set down at 24. I think he actually had it at 16 kilohertz, which is a little crazy. But at 24 kilohertz, he had it set at. And again, this is a 3.5-inch quad. I changed that up to 48 kilohertz, and that made a big difference. That made the quad, you know, it didn't have the electrical issue. So let me pull those up so you can see that one. So we talked about here. Long way. So when I received that one, that is this quad here. Oh man, UV Tech, 3.5-inch logs. So this is the first flight with the Betaflight Quad, which had the Zeus. And you can see, same issue. So Zeus, this is the Zeus 25 HGLRC, not the V1, the V2. And the reason I bring up the V1, V2 again is on later, just a couple days ago, I put on the Betaflight Slack to the devs, hey, have you guys ever seen a good Zeus flight controller? Because I did a review using this quad actually, race rig, of the Zeus something. I can't remember what it was. back in the day. This was probably like 2 or 3 years ago. Same issue, had all kinds of electrical noise issue. It's an all-in-one Zeus, HELRZ Zeus flight controller. I actually have a bunch of them. They sent me a bunch, um, but they had issues. So then get this one, still had issues, but they, talking with a couple of Betaflight devs, they're like, no, I have the same thing as Zeus 25, but they said they had the V2 and it was fine. So what are the differences? They're subtle. Electrical component design on a tight chip. It could just be the capacitors. Now, if it's the exact same brand, you can see all the issues here. And I tried a couple of things like on this one. So this was the first flight. You can see all the problems, right? It's on every pitch move. I don't think it's on yaw. It's on yaw too. Yeah, it's on pitch and yaw move. So it was just bad all around. Then I switched to 48 kilohertz. So this was 16 kilohertz PWM frequency. And look how much better it made it. So you can still see it here by switching to 48 kilohertz from 24. Now you're giving up low-end motor torque. So it's not like, oh, well, we should all be running 48 carte blanche. It's like, no, we should try to go lower if you can. But in this case, you kind of can't. So with this is flyable. Like, I got to be honest, I was looking at this and I said, hey, he still has issues. What do you want me to do with this? Do you want me to try to tune it? He's like, nah, just, I said, I did tune the KISS one since this one's having issues. Let me know if you want to get another board, I could put it in. He kind of said, nah, it's going to be a pain for you to put a new board in. I don't disagree because he had a naked Vista in there and I wasn't really looking forward to it. But he's like, just send it back. So I ended up tuning it anyways. And in flight, without looking at the log, you can't really notice this. So it was fine for tuning, but you can still see these issues here. I did try different things on it, like putting capacitors. I put a brand new capacitor on it. There really is no, I put a tantalum capacitor on it, these little ones, on the 5-volt rail. That didn't really help anything. I don't think there is any exposed 3.3 volt rail, but I switched the capacitor out to a different capacitor, like a Panasonic one that I had. It seemed to me like this up front here was a little bit better with the kind of more of a name brand capacitor. He had the capacitor he had on there was just the one that came with it, which is kind of like an unbranded silver looking thing. I had, Panasonic ones. So you could see like the upfront moves here seemed a little bit better to me. But the back end, you can still see the electrical noise. It's not so bad, like that one's hardly there at all. Here you can see it. Like you shouldn't have these up and down spikes here. Now that said, I kind of looked at it and I said, well, after I had that, I kind of flew it around and I was like, well, you know what? The only thing you'd maybe notice is if your full voltage battery and did a flip or a roll like right off the bat, you may notice it because it has that higher voltage. But other than that, you can fly it around just fine. So I ended up flying it around and see if I still have that footage. So let's see here. I actually did a thing here on it. So I thought this was interesting. After I kind of tuned it up, even with that electrical issue, I felt Betaflight flew better on it, which I was not expecting. But it's kind of the classic things. KISS is fine, but it doesn't have a couple of things that Betaflight does. And the biggest one is anti-gravity. It doesn't have any anti-gravity code. So you get more like when you hit 100% throttle and then jump off the throttle, you'll see the nose kind of move. Or in Betaflight, that doesn't really happen that much at all. It's maybe like a slight shudder, but not, you don't see like this big dip. So yeah, so I tuned them both up, and again, even with that slight electrical noise that I was showing there, that maybe, you know, because so basically my point is, if you see that little bit of electrical noise and those vibrations that I just showed in the logs there, don't get too hung up in the logs. You know, they're a good indicator, but it's not everything. Like they're a good indicator to know if things are performing well. You can see it's not optimal, but if I can't notice it in everyday flight, is it that big of a deal? Those boards are pretty expensive.
Hey, Jan, just want to make this quick.
Hold on, did a little video for them. And let me go back to here and show you what this looks like. But yeah, if you can't see the stuff in full flight, then, you know, maybe don't sweat it. But if you are trying to kind of get an assessment, obviously the stuff where it was those huge spikes that we saw, that you know, that doesn't let you do like a full flip or roll well, then that's an issue you'd probably want to address. I don't see how you deal with that. But so let's just look here how the Betaflight Quad flew. The right spot here. See how the Betaflight Quad flew. It's the KISS tuned, Betaflight tuned. So this is how it flew with those issues. So let's just play this real quick. I'm gonna have a little background noise I threw on for him, because I was like, it's just because it's a Vista, right? So now you can't hear the quad audio. That's fine. Like, flips and rolls. His rates are a little faster than mine. But honestly, if you would hand me this quad and it had that little bit of electrical, like we saw in the logs, which it still does here, would never notice it. It was fine. So that's that. Still have to get the courage to power loop those trees. They're just they're really tall. So if anything gets stuck up there, it's never coming down. You're never getting up there. It's like they're at least 80 feet up. Well, I would say at least 60. Probably the tops are 80, I would guess. So you can see the prop wash performance here, right? Let's see if I get to a spot. I don't, in this flight, I actually switched to another segment here. I think it's real soon here where I do the throttle pumps. Okay, maybe it's a little farther down. Right here. All right, so I do some throttle pumps here. So this is Betaflight thumping the throttle, right? You can see a little bit. There was two throttle pumps in there. Right here. On throttle, off. On, off. And if you look at the horizon, you can kind of hardly see it go. Now let's go to and this is what I was talking about with the KISS. So with the KISS tune, I have D as high as it can go. You can't go any higher in D. It will start to flutter. It's already, like, we're on the edge of the fluttery D thing. So I have it just below that, maybe like a 1 or 2. I think he started getting flutters at like, yeah, he started getting flutters at like D of 12. I moved it down to like 11, I think. I think he had it at 10 initially, so I couldn't get any more. And then move P up as high as I could. Any P up any higher, you also get flutters, which kind of kick in with prop wash. It will start to flutter and be like extended instead of like brrr, it will be like brrr, and keep kind of fluttering. So P couldn't go any higher. And then same thing with I. Keep boosting up I. It would get bounce back. So here you can see, and it's not, see if I can turn the quality up here, buddy. This is the KISS one. Oh, this is as received. So let's go to tuned. There's this tuned. Sorry. Very electrical noise. I got noise and number off the new kit combination by time to run today. So it needs to work better. Yeah. So just like a prop washes a little bit more, you can notice that. See if I get to, yeah, see the wash there? And there's the pump in the throttle. See how it, right here. Didn't show it really well. Right there. See where I get off the throttle? Right? Pump, pump, pump. Fine there, but then when you jump off the throttle, so after going up to it and then jumping off, you'll see it kind of dip down. So KISS flies fine. Like, it's not bad. It's just Betaflight just a little bit better. Just a little bit around the edges. A little bit better prop wash. Throttle's a little bit better. So, yeah. That was it. All right. So, with all that, let's get into some questions and answer here. Rowdy FPV says he had a Mamba 405 MK3 Lite. Compliments of diatone. They sent me an extra, same noise issue today. I soldered a cap on VBAT and it seemed to work better. Yeah. So a cap on VBAT is this first place I would go. Because you probably have them. Probably some extra around and see if you can get it on there and see if it helps. I know Brian White does a lot of cine lifter tuning, and so he has a lot of experience. And same thing, put a cap on VBAT. The bigger, basically, the bigger the motors, the more you will need more capacitance because they give more back EMF, electrical noise. Something up how to write it the same. Something not. So I guess Rowdy, just to button up that question up above, you know, it could be as simple as if a flight controller, if the capacitance on here isn't soldered well. You know, whereas if you have the same exact model and brand and version number, one works fine and one does not, maybe some of the caps, the little ceramic capacitors they have on there are bad, or maybe one of the joints has a little bit of a crack in it or something. It's hard to tell. So yeah, Zipper Lips says, you know, manufacturing variances. I have had no good luck. So MQZ FPV says he has not had good luck with the BMI 270 yet. Gets strange behavior and rolls on both axes. I've heard it flutter in there. Not so pleasant in logging. So MQZ, you know, first thing I would say is which flight controller? You know, I don't think it's the gyro. I think it's the flight controller. It's capacitance, or maybe not a great flight controller design. What I would do to check it, if it's a standalone flight controller, I know it's a little bit of work, but desolder that VBAT pin from the ESC. I'm assuming it's two separate boards. Get a 2S battery if you don't have one. Solder it up to the flight controller's VBAT and ground pad. Power the flight controller separately, see if it goes away. If it does, that's definitely an electrical issue then. It's not the gyro. If it doesn't, then you definitely know it's a gyro. And if you're trying to get a new board and you're trying to say, either way, I guess you can point that out to them. Show them those test results. Just video it with your phone. Sometimes these guys just need something. Just show them your new soldering up. Show them the flight characteristics. Show them outside of that. That's the big thing with manufacturers. I think a lot of manufacturers and shops will work with you. If you get a bad flight controller or a bad gyro or something, you got to show them something. They're not going to just say, you just can't say, hey, I want a new thing, send it to me. Like, show them some tests, show them some things that you've done to kind of vet it out yourself. And then I think most will work with you. Capacitance of V.3. High voltage. An issue connecting to my Mamba MK2 Betaflight. I got see driver fiction lanes. Detected it. What else can I do? So Gregory Olives. Yeah, Gregory Olives, I would say. So you're saying you tried to flash up or connect your flight controller to Betaflight and you're having issues. You tried the HG or the Impulse, excuse me, Impulse RC driver fixer, and that did not work. What else can you try? That is the easiest one. If you have an opportunity, I guess one big thing you can look at is hook up another flight controller if you have one. Does that work? If it does, then your driver should be okay. Or try to hook it up to another computer. There's so many variables in this, like do you have a Windows 10 computer or is it Windows 7? So first thing I would try to do is hook up a different flight controller, see if that works. If it doesn't, then hook up to a different computer. So people in the chat are saying cable. Yeah, definitely try a different cable. Some cables, so you have Windows 10. If you plug in the flight controller, it should just recognize it and work. Try a different cable, even though if you're like, well, I've been using this cable, it's fine. Well, then maybe it just went bad. Just try a new cable. They're not hard to grab. There's little things you can try. If you have a computer, your wife has a computer, whatever, try to plug it into that one. If you try the driver fixer, then that did not work. There's really a rabbit hole that I won't be able to kind of get down through here on this live stream, but you can go onto the Discord. I can see if I can help you out with it, and some other guys are on there as well. We can kind of try to work through that, but it can be problematic. So try those two things, couple things. Try a different cable, try to hook it up to a different computer, try and hook another flight controller up to your computer and see if those work. And then if none of those work, jump on. There's links in most of my videos to the Discord. I think they're in all the videos, so just go to any of the videos, go down to the Discord, and then you can hop on there. And then just tag me on it, and then we can try to work through it. How did I do the preset Betaflight animated? I would like to. Oh, okay. So RC Dorgas, I guess. Dorgas. Am I saying that right? RC Dorgas? Dorgas? Yeah, I don't know. I would like to upload your preset to Betaflight, but it's made for 4.2 version. I run 4.3. Do you recommend switching back or going straight in? Slider setup seems to be compatible. So my presets are in 4.3. So if you go to here. Oh yeah, that is the video. That is this is the internet. Here we go. You go to the uavtech.com. My presets. Have you looked at the KISS Ultra V2 at all? No, I have not. I have not looked at it. So it's the KISS Ultra, just a new version, I guess. He's out with. Is there anything new in it? I think the KISS Ultra worked fine though. Yeah, there was no issues with the old one for like electrical noise or anything. So I would hope the V2 is just as good. But yeah, go to here, uavtech.com. I have the presets. If you're in Betaflight 4.2, when there was no presets in Betaflight 4.2, then they're all down here. You just got to kind of look at these images and manually make the adjustments. I don't have anything to import. Do note these are some CLI dump things to dump in there. They're not mission critical, but they are, you know, you're going through these four things, this, and this to get the preset entered in. And then there's notes here on what PWM frequency to use, what I would recommend at least when you're, and then those PWM frequency recommendations from whoops down to toothpicks all the way to 9-10 inch quads, those hold even with the 4.3. Now 4.3 presets, they're in Betaflight 4.3. Of course, make sure you have the 10.8 configurator downloaded in there. You should have the presets tab go in there, select UAV Tech, and then all the presets are in there specifically for 4.3. 4.4 is going to be out before you know it. So they've moved my presets up to 4.4. I got to go back through them and make any tweaks to them for 4.4 stuff because there's some anti-gravity changes. That's kind of about it for like tuning parameters. There's improvements in other whole variety of other things. But yeah, so you don't need to upload anything. It's all right there. Just check those out. Painting my custom design prints. So Bass NL asks, any suggestions flying a 2.5 inch with 1404 Blue Jay 96 kilohertz on 4.3. When I push the throttle to 0, it wobbles on pitch and roll. Yes, I definitely have suggestions. It's easy. So let's switch up here. Let's go to Aw. The first thing I would do, if you can, is 96 kilohertz is okay, but you're losing motor torque with that, like low end motor torque. So the first thing I would try, and these are, I'm going to go through a bunch of stuff, but you don't do everything all at once. That's like everybody's default reaction. The reason I go through, whenever I give advice, it's always do this one thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. If I say to do it all at the same time, that's what I mean. But otherwise, the default is do one thing, next thing, next thing, because everything along the way is somewhat a little bit of a compromise, right? So the first thing I would do is go from 96 kilohertz down to 48 kilohertz. That should give you some better low end motor torque. That may all by itself solve your throttle or your wobble issue because of that low end torque's not there. That will bring it, you know, since the 96 kilohertz PWM, it's kind of robbed you of that. You may note that the battery life is less. I doubt it though. Not on 1404 motors you won't. Maybe on a whoop. And even on the whoops, I didn't really notice anything between 48 and 96. So I don't ever run 96, but take note of it. Maybe you do. If you do notice the battery life, then you have to, you know, make a choice. Go with 48 or 96. If you don't notice any battery life difference and it's fine on 48, then stick on 48. Obviously, if it solves your issue, then you're done. If it is not done, I already picked this up. I don't know why it's, do I have it up already? No, I don't. Where is it? On Betaflight. What are you doing to me? There you go. Betaflight is trying to open. Come on, buddy. You can do it. You're just a simple web app. You'll be all right. All right. So let's go into here. And he has 4.3 on it. Good. All right. So the next thing I would check out is presets. and I would check out. So you have a, let's go back to here. You have a 2.5 inch. So yeah, so what I would do is check out my toothpick preset. So 2 to 4 inch. Again, I have these options here for 48, so I would try that. So I'm saying don't mess with the preset. If everything's cool and your wobble is the only problem, the first thing I would do is just drop it to 48 kilohertz in the ESC PWM frequency. If the problem goes away, ignore all the rest of this. If it doesn't go away, the next thing I would do is go into this preset, load the 48K, load RPM filtering and bidirectional. Now, if you have RPM filtering, if you have Blue Jay, I think you said you had Blue Jay. Yeah, Blue Jay. Then you have RPM filtering. Or you have bidirectional D-shot and dynamic auto. You want those two things. So go ahead and pick that, hit OK, save and reboot. And we're going to wrap up here. So ZFPV says, yeah, I haven't paid much attention lately either, but the Ultra is definitely a step up from traditional KISS. How? You know me, Z. Let's get into it. It has that braking thing that doesn't really do anything very well, in my opinion. I'm not a whatever. They should. I'll get blowback. I don't really guess. If you're going to lock iTerm, you need to do it with throttle input, not based. It's too late if you do it any other way. That's why they still have bounce back. It didn't really help. So other than that, it's just normal KISS. And it has the features with the DJI stuff, which is good. And it has the OSD, which is great for KISS. Other than that, yeah, flight performance wise, it's the same firmware. So anyways, coming into here, you're going to go to PID tuning, and that preset loaded a bunch of things that will help with wobble, right? The 48K switch we already talked about. If it didn't solve it altogether, it definitely is a step in the right direction. It's going to give you a little bit more motor torque. The next big thing that this adds in here is thrust linear. That will increase your PIDs at low end throttle by 20%. So that, with that preset turned on, if you have any issues with this preset, let me just refresh my memory here real quick. Yeah, if you have any issues with this preset, a couple things you can try depending on your quad specifically, because the preset's just a default. So, maybe it works well. It should work well for you. But if it doesn't, a couple things you can try is specifically if this preset's not really flying great for you. One thing you can do is either just remove this, lower this master slider, but I wouldn't do that unless you need to. The other thing you can do is lower this gyro filter slider. Again, I wouldn't do that unless you need to. If it's flying great, then don't touch it. So that's just kind of general flight characteristics. But if you still have wobble issue, which you shouldn't, you should go ahead and lower this drift wobble slider. So if you lower it towards the drift side, you're going to get more drift, like as in when you get off the throttle, it might drift a little bit, or wind will maybe push it a little bit more. Like if you get a gust, it might push it off axis and it will take a little bit longer for it to return. So it's going to it'd be hard to notice it. Bigger quads, you'd notice it more. Obviously, if it's a little higher, you're going to get wobbles at some point. So that's what you'd use this slider for, the drift wobble, to move that down. So those are the two things I would try. Obviously, the things I just talked about here with this drift wobble and this thrust linear, if you did not want to apply my preset and you just wanted to try those two things, that will address your wobble issue. Guaranteed, if you move this down, it will do that. But there is a little bit of compromise by moving this down. So I would kind of do it in the order I said. All right, guys, it's 4 o'clock here. Let me just run through a couple more of these and then we'll wrap it up. Let me see here. custom design, print, blah, blah, blah. Yes. Extension. Official Betaflight 4.3 tuning notes tells me I have to lock crossfire in either 50 or 100 hertz node because there is encountering problems. Is this an RC link negotiation bug? No. So Audio Geek FPV, yeah. There's no bug. They're saying for peak performance. So what the reason basically his question is that they're saying that he needs to lock it. They're saying for like racers. So what happens with Crossfire is that, Crossfire really touted that it's the fastest control link back in the day, like 5 years ago. And it was true. But the 150 hertz mode, it is very short range. As in, you go 100 yards away. Yeah, I would say at least, or maybe not even 100 yards away, it jumps to 50 hertz mode. So that jump has to retrain the filtering. It does it automatically, but basically what we're saying is for peak like racing performance to lock that at 150 hertz mode, because you're not going to lose signal or anything. It's not going to have a fail safe. It just trips up. It goes up to the 50 hertz mode. So if you're not noticing issues, I wouldn't worry about it. There's no bug or anything like that. It just takes the flight controller a second to retrain. As it usually, I think it takes like half a second, couple seconds for it to retrain on the new frame rate. And obviously that can throw you off if you're racing. You got to keep in mind that all the tuning notes, yeah, I'm pretty sure almost all, yeah, are written by devs that are really, really into racing. So that's where they're thinking all the time. Racing, 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 racing. UAT Tech is talking about 8.5 inch with a naked GoPro all up weight 270. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, even still, toothpick tune would be good. It's 2 to 4 inch quads will be good with that toothpick preset. Make it. And the last thing here is block U mosses. I don't know how to say that. Does variable PWM frequency 24 to 28 kilohertz make a difference on a 270 quad 1404 4S whoop with a naked GoPro? Yeah, it will help. Because then at high throttle, you'd be 48 kilohertz. At low throttle, you'd be 24 kilohertz. I kind of argue, though, like, I would just set it at 24 kilohertz. See, I don't do the variable. I just do the lowest PWM frequency you can. The only reason I would go up to a higher PWM frequency is you have electrical noise issues, which I don't use gear that has that. But if you have electrical noise issues, then try higher PWM frequency. Or you have mid-throttle oscillations. Like as you're going up through the throttle, you see it like start to shake. And then it's like, why is it when I'm like at near mid-throttle, it starts to shake a little bit? It could be because of the EFC aliasing stuff. So then try higher. Other than that, I don't do it. There's no reason to. So I would just leave it. You want it to be as low. It's like golf, as low as you can with that PWM frequency. That's my advice. Okay. Let me see here. Same quad. Receiver running it. So I'll do, yeah, so what is the benefit of by RPM, Zipper Lips asks? It ramps it based on the RPM versus the throttle. That's the difference. So, obviously if you ramp the throttle, you can ramp it really fast, but the motors might not speed up that fast. They're going to be a little bit delayed based on your ramp. So it ties it to the RPMs versus your commands. So your throttle command. So it's not, and it's going to set that at the, it's going to put the higher end cap based on the RPMs of the motor. So it's a little bit smarter than just saying ramp from 24 to 48. So he's got like 3 options. Again, my advice still holds. I would just run the lowest, but it's your stuff. You could, run it whichever way. I guess last one here, since we're a couple of minutes over, is I have an R9 receiver running ELRS. I'm always getting connection lost alerts in the Betaflight OSD. Most of the time, it doesn't notice any difference, but sometimes it really drops out of the air. Any ideas? Check your antennas. Something's off. Take a look at your RSSI, your LQ. Check your antennas. Something's not right. You can try. I mean, FR Sky makes good gear, so I doubt it's the gear. It's probably just a making sure your antennas are not damaged. Making sure that you're using the correct antennas, like that's a real newbie thing. But if you're using, you got to be using 900 megahertz antennas, not 2.4 gigahertz antennas. I'm assuming you are. They're the longer ones. Transmitter and the receiver, of course. Stuff like that. Again, if you're having more issues, check out the Discord. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming out. I'll wrap it up with that. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, or whatnot, always do leave a comment on the videos. I try to answer those, but of course we have the Discord links on all my videos, and reach out for that. Hopefully you learned something today, and hopefully it was helpful. But yeah, with that, we'll sign off. Guys, have a great afternoon, and I'll see you soon. Look out for some new content. It's coming. Betaflight 4.4 is coming out. A lot of new content on that coming, so it should be fun. I'm excited about it because when something new comes out, it's just fun to kind of play with it, experiment, see what it's like. So yeah, it should be a good time. Thanks everybody. See you soon.